Hey guys, welcome back to Human Condition. This video is another video in our biology series. I thought it'd be cool to do something new and interesting. So instead of the brain chemical series for this one, I was thought about doing genetics and talk about how genetics can potentially impact our personalities, or how do genetics impact our personalities? Yeah. Uh, so yeah, um, there is three personality tests that have genetic predispositions. These also can be influenced by your environment. However, in this video, I'll just focus more on the genetic part of it. So the three are supernumerary inventory, which is something new that suggests that we have 10 personality traits, along with the big five, which is we'll talk about in a second. But 10 personality traits that go into detail. The big five, which is openness to experience, agreeableness, neuroticism, um, conscientiousness, and extroversion. And then the final one, which be hexaco, which adds to the big five. And those are the three main topics that we'll talk about how we can be uh, influence our genetic personality and how it impacts us. So yeah, start off with the big five. I feel like this is the one mostly talked about. The big five is personality traits that stay relatively stable most of life and don't change that often, um, except in early life. And most of these are genetic or environment based, but since they stay stable, a lot of it's also genetic, but still, um, majority is also environment. So these would be openness to experience. Um, Genetically, you might be more predisposed to be want to seek out new experiences, or your experiences in life made you more naturally want to seek out new fun things, uh, potentially. If you have low openness to experience, it means more of a strict routine potentially, um, and like to do the same things. You like your day to day routine. You don't like to switch it up that much. That's lower level of openness to experience, which can also be genetic as well, or environment based. Um, Conscientiousness. This means self discipline and self awareness. So this is if you're being like if you how self aware you are and how self disciplined. So this would be like being able to pick up the vibe in the room, like when things are awkward. Sometimes if you pick that up, that would be potentially high conscientiousness. Also, if you're good at keeping up with tasks and staying focused, this can be a genetic component. So you might genetically be actually um, more inclined to be disciplined and self-aware. However, you through experiences of lack of self-awareness or lack of discipline might have grown higher levels of conscientiousness as well. Low levels can also be genetic, which I think is kind of interesting. So it's cool to see how we can genetics can influence how disciplined we are sometimes and how self-aware we are. I think that's kind of cool to see. Um, neuroticism. Neuroticism is irritability and anger and anxiousness and basically all negative emotions. So we genetically might naturally be predisposed to be more aggravated potentially or anxious or depressed, sadly. However, luckily, these genetics don't define us. It's cool to see genetics. Um, if you have good genetics, it shows uh, you might your experiences might have dulled down your potential, and even if you didn't have the best genetics, experiences um, can those genetics don't define us. Our experiences and our choices can help us become the best versions of ourselves. So it's a positive either way. Genetic positive. If you have positive genetics, um, you might your environment might have dulled that down, and you might not be living up to your full potential, and can. And if you have bad, potentially you can. If you focus on changing your environment, you can improve and become a better person. through your own merit, which I think is cool. So genetics can help us achieve our full potential. However, if we don't like the genetics, we can work hard to make our own, work hard to define who we are, not based on our genetics, which I think is really cool. Agreeableness, you might naturally genetically be more agreeable of a person, or life experiences have either you've had times where you weren't agreeable and then you just like got tired of having those, or life experiences have been really good and you made you more agreeable. You also might genetically be predisposed to being less agreeable, or if you've been too agreeable in life, you might decide not to be as agreeable through your experiences, which is kind of interesting. And finally, extroversion, you might naturally be more outgoing, but this can be developed. If you want to be more outgoing, you can develop it through experiences, which is really cool. Supernumerary inventory. I'm not gonna go through all of these because I feel like this would be a really long video if I did all three in detail. But this one was really cool, and it was 10 personality traits that I didn't know could be genetic, which I thought was really interesting. These are thriftiness, seductiveness, manipulativeness, femininity, conventionality, integrity, risk-taking, religiosity, egoism, and humorousness. So it's cool. All 10 of those can actually be genetically predisposed, or you can develop those traits through life experiences. This tester is a 1 through 5 scale, and you do it on your own, and you test. It asks you certain questions, and you rank 1 to 5, and after the end of the test, you calculate the score, and you see, for example, you might rank 4 on humorousness and thriftiness, and that means you're more funny, and you're more cautious and careful especially with finances, with thriftiness. Or you might rank on the lower end, and there's pros and cons to if you're on the lower, in the middle, or on the high end. I would go into all pros and cons of each, but that would be a really long video. However, just a quick rundown of each one. Thriftiness is how cautious you are, and how frugal and careful you are specifically with your money. Humorousness, how funny you are, can be developed, can be naturally inherited, but also can be developed. Femininity, how nurturing and emotionally caring you are, intuitive, thoughtful. Risk-taking, how comfortable you are with not being in control of life and just going with the flow. This is kind of the opposite of manipulativeness. Egoism, this is how confident or unconfident and how focused you are on one's own desires or others' desires. High levels of this can be bad, and because you might take the spotlight from other people, be too focused on your own desires. However, the pro can be have confidence to achieve goals. And too low, you might give so much recognition to other people but not feel unrecognized if you have too low on the egoism. And if you're in the middle, you might want more recognition but not want the spotlight, and you might be stuck in the middle. And that goes to all the 10 of them. The middle one, you might want more or less, but you might be stuck in between the two. Integrity represents your moral code, or just if you have any codes in general. High versions of this means you have high codes, rules that you apply to yourself, whether they're moral or not. Just depends. And the high levels means, can you stick to your own moral code, or are you able to be more agreeable? Religiosity suggests that we might inherit our willing. Potentially, this obviously can grow through experiences in our lives. But I think it's really cool that your openness to be faithful and believe can somewhat be genetically inherited, but also obviously through experiences. I thought that was kind of cool to see. So high levels of this means you have a high faith and moral code. Low levels, you have a hard time with trust potentially, or not just that, but hard time. You might focus instead of on the you might focus more on the day-to-day life than the deep meaning of life. High levels of this means focusing on the deep meaning of life. Low levels meaning focus on the day-to-day life of religiosity. Seductiveness means how well you can charm people and influence them to do things. And also, it could also imply romantic seductiveness. This is really cool. I didn't know that was genetic. Could be genetic. So you can be like, if you're not feeling super seductive or charming, you can blame it on your genetics. But basically, high levels, you can charm and influence people. Low levels, you might be more genuine, but have a hard time influencing and charming. Manipulativeness, it sounds really bad the way they put it, but high levels, if used positively, it just means you can be very persuasive and convincing. Negatively, it means you can be controlling and deceitful. High levels, this just means how badly you want to control yourself and the situations you have in life. So high levels means you're very controlling of your own sense of self and your situations you incur in life. And if you use this in a positive way, you can just be persuasive and convincing. Use the negative way, you might try controlling other people and being deceitful. Low levels, you might be more carefree and not feel like the need to be in control of always be in control of yourself and control the situations you incur in life. I think that's all 10 of them. So those are the supernumerary inventory. Pretty interesting. All 10 can be genetic. And then finally, the hexaco. The hexaco is stands for honesty, humility, scale, emotionality, extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and open to experience. It's similar to the big five, however, it adds 2 more items to it. Honesty and humility scale, lower levels means potentially to be more greedy and manipulative and self-desiring. Higher levels of the honesty and humility means you're open, less greedy, avoidance, more transparent, and less deceitful, manipulative. Low levels, more deceitful, manipulative, and trying to achieve your desires. Emotionality, similar to neuroticism in the big five. The only difference is this is less all based on anger and irritability, but more specifically the need for emotional support, advice. It might be shy and reserved, and deep emotional connections. The lower end of this would be stoic, emotionally strong, and less needing of, and less worrying, and just more on focused on emotionally stable and less anxious potentially. Extroversion is the same as the big five. Agreeableness, similar. This adds lower levels of agreeableness, adds the potential to be irritable and aggressive, similar to neuroticism, the big five. Conscientious, the same as big five, and openness to the same as big five. So yeah, this was all the personality traits that potentially can be predisposed. I thought this was pretty interesting. It's crazy to me to think that the 10 of the supernumerary, I don't know if I'm saying that right, inventory can be genetically inherited potentially. IQ, when I was researching it, said 50% variation between people. So that means maybe potentially 50% or maybe a little lower of IQ is inherited. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong about that. And I think if I remember when I did emotional intelligence, 10% is inherited. So yeah, I hope you guys found this video pretty interesting. Inclusion. Genetics is very important to figure out how we are. It doesn't define who we are. So if our genetics aren't, there's no such thing as bad genetics, but if our genetics aren't potentially positive, we can still overcome these through our experiences and define who we are. And our genetics, if we're not living up to our full genetic potential, we can still achieve the best we can be. So it's a win-win. Either way, hopefully, in my opinion. So yeah, when I was researching, 30 to 60% is genetics, personalities, meaning 40 to 70% is our environment. So still our environment affects our personality just a tad bit more. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, thanks again for watching. Like, subscribe if you want. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.